Mick, it's an honor, man, to get a chance to speak with you, and I'm glad we had a little conversation beforehand. But how are you feeling about being here in Toronto, having your photos being shown here at the Liss Gallery, and for somebody like myself who grew up on old school, and yeah, we're videoing it. Yeah, yeah. See, this is what I love about you, because you're real, you're having fun, and your pictures, like I said, they're so historic on snapshots of the 70s and what it was all about back in the day.
I'm not telling you what it was all about back in the day, because your mummy and daddy might not like it.
How did you get into something like this at the beginning?
It kind of wandered in, which is about, in those days, I mean, it wasn't the idea of having a quote career as a rock and roll photographer would have been completely daft. They'd have locked you away for being off the beam. I mean, there was, you didn't make much money, but you didn't have to get up till noon, and there were fringe benefits.
Oh, I'm not even going to touch that. But the other benefits too was you were taking pictures of artists that were, as today, are considered icons. You got to see the progression. How did you get into their family, and what was the trust that you were able to bring to them so that they allowed you to take these iconic photos?
I think part of it was being young, because younger people are more open, and I think they they knew that my loyalty was with them, not with a magazine or a record label. Nobody owned me. I was a free radical. Maybe I was informed. I don't know. It just kind of happened. It wasn't like something I had spent much time thinking about. Something seemed to happen when I picked up a camera. I certainly wasn't training to be a photographer. I think my parents thought I would be some kind of lecturer. I mean, I did go to Cambridge University and studied modern languages, literature, and then LSD. And the LSD was the key. Suddenly I could see. I don't know if I could really see before I took LSD. And the stuff back then, in the late 60s, that was, in England anyway, it was strong. It was even, if you check out, if you've got 93 minutes to waste, check out the documentary that Vice Films made about me called Shot with an exclamation mark. And I talk about things like that in there, and I didn't even have a camera. I borrowed a friend's camera on an acid trip and started to play around, and it somehow got me excited. I mean, as it was, who knows how high I was on the LSD, because back in those days, the only source I knew used to drop it on blotting paper. So he didn't know how much he was really giving her. So it was strong stuff. I think one way I look at it is it kind of opened up my third eye, and not just to photography, but meditation, also yoga. I mean, I've been, even through my, how shall we put it, let's just be straight ahead. Even through my drug years, I still did yoga. And what I never did was drink or do heroin. I was more like the Sugar Plum Fairy. You needed to scrape me off the ceiling, because I was going at a fair old lick and quite high.
Would that make a difference if you did take heroin, do you think?
I think it wasn't my mentality. I mean, people I knew that took smack, they used to get very dopey and uninteresting. It wasn't really my head. I like to communicate, and it was just part of my nature. None of this was anything I did with a lot of thoughts. I'd be thinking about all kinds of things, but not really photography. I think in a way, looking back, that helped me be very open to these characters in a way that I don't think all photographers were, because they were what you would call, commercial photographers. They were I was, not that I had any money, but you could live in the middle of London or New York in those days for very little. Didn't need to make a lot of money. Um, it just happened. I can only put it like that. And photography, I was still thinking about maybe making movies, being a writer, but the photography kept coming back, and there were positive responses from the beginning. There was nothing to, and it was also those times, remember, I mean, there wasn't much money in photography if you weren't a fashion photographer, and it didn't matter. The good thing was, in retrospect, that nobody was interested in, they weren't going to pay you much money, but they never talked about owning the pictures. In fact, I never heard the word copyright bandied around photographs back in those days. I remember in the late 80s, a lady, she was actually a paralegal, but she'd done a bit of work, and she started talking about IPs. I said, what do you mean? And she was talking about, well, a photograph was an intellectual property. For me, it had been very anti-intellectual, which I think was part of the thing that maybe appealed to me. It was such a visceral thing, as opposed to my highly classical British education, you see. So I was on a roll.
What was David Bowie like? You had a great relationship with him.
I did it. Not only this book, which was originally the Rise of David Bowie, the Taschen book that you see in the gallery here. We did that just before the end of his life. And the limited edition was co-signed. But we had done a book in 2002 for a company called Genesis Publications. In fact, there's another Genesis Publications book in this, the book I did with Lou Reed just before he died. And I was a South London lad like David. We came from similar backgrounds, and I was, I suppose, very educated, and he just operated in an intuitive, he went to art college at 15. Didn't manifest a lot of cerebral behavior in those early years. In fact, he was highly cerebral and read a hell of a lot more than I did. I don't know where he found the time. I remember the day because I'd gone to Cambridge, he thought I knew certain things. And some things maybe I did know that he didn't know. But he would find out what he wanted to know. But I do remember him calling me up, as it was back then, and he started to talk to me about Schopenhauer. And after a bit, I said, David, you have to understand, I know a few things, but Schopenhauer just did not seduce me, darling. That was his, but he liked things like, a little drop of Schopenhauer and Kierkegaard. Words are important to him. With me anyway, he never tried to edit or stop the pictures. He really liked them, but the words were very important to him. But I don't think when we did these books, I would do the edit, show him a whole load of stuff, and he'd basically say, fine, Mick, what about the words? He was very bright, very curious, constantly looking for novelty or something a little different, He never got, God bless the Rolling Stones, but they're basically like a super 60s band. You can't really, even though David had a sort of super heyday in the 70s, as indeed I did. Like me, he's kept on working, but he kept working right up to the end. And I thought that was very brave of him. I thought I'd have been up in the Himalayas looking for gurus to save my life. I think he thought he was going to beat it, but think George Harrison did. I think in both cases the cigarettes had a lot to do with it. I've got a lot of pictures of David with cigarettes, so you can see cigarette packs sitting around. And I do believe, I mean, he chain smoked for 40 years. And if you've got to smoke something, please have a joint, or even get one of those pens, you know, the other pen.
We're actually working that out in Ontario right now, so and in Canada, so cross fingers it's going to happen. But I have to
I cross my legs, darling, over that one.